Welcome fiber friends, and if you're coming back from video 1, welcome back. My name is Louis Boria and this is the Lonka Accessories knit along. In today's video we're going to be working on the fingerless mittens for the Lonka Accessories line. I love fingerless mittens. Now the cool thing about fingerless mittens is that they work up pretty quickly. So in this project you should be able to knock out these fingerless mittens in no time. Maybe a day, maybe 2 days, depending on how fast you knit. If you haven't worked with double pointed needles, fear not. I avoided double pointed needles for the first maybe 2 years in my knitting journey. So today I'll go through the process of how to work with double pointed needles, some tips and tricks along the way as well. If you haven't taken a look at video 1 and you're just jumping into video 2 because you only want to do the fingerless mittens, I urge you to just take a peek at video 1. I have some tips and tricks that we're going to be talking about in this video as well. So I may skip over a couple things because I do have it in video 1. So be sure to watch video 1 even if you didn't work on the hat or you don't want to work on the hat. So let's get ready and start the fingerless mittens. For my fingerless mittens, I'm going with green as contrasting color A, blue as main color, mustard as contrasting color C, and white as contrasting color B. With blue as my main color for my fingerless mittens, I'm going to go ahead and begin my cast on using the German twist cast on. We're going to cast on 30 stitches using double pointed needles. So I like to start off with using one needle to put all my stitches onto one needle and then transfer them. So with our size 10 US 10 needle, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cast on 30 stitches using the long tail cast on. Now if you don't know how to do the long tail cast on and this is your first video, then I'm gonna ask you to stop the video and go take a look at video 1 that I put up on YouTube last week, and that will tell you how to go ahead and do the German twist cast on. So if you need reference, stop the video and check out video 1. So I'm going to go ahead and cast on 30 stitches, like I said, using the long tail cast on and the German twist cast on. And the reason why we want the German twist cast on as opposed to the long tail cast on is because the German twist gives you a stretchy cast on, and we want that, especially for cuffs. Like I said in video 1, for bottoms of the edges of our sweaters, the collars, cuffs, we want that to be stretchy. So I'm going to go ahead and finish casting on my 30 stitches. So I just finished casting on my stitches onto my first needle. So instead of 30 stitches, I actually added an extra stitch, making it 31. And the reason why is because I'll be losing one of those stitches for joining in the round. So the first thing you want to do is transfer 10 stitches onto each needle. And then transfer onto the second needle 10 stitches also. So now that I have all my stitches transferred, on needle 1 you should have 10 stitches, needle 2 you should have 10 stitches, and then on needle 3, if you're going to do the join like I did by adding that extra stitch, you should have 11 stitches on needle 3. Now one thing I want you to make sure is that you did not twist your stitches. As in the round, you want to make sure all your stitches are going in the same direction so that it's not twisted. Okay, so make sure that everything is lined properly, and then I'm going to show you how I like to join in the round. Now you want to make sure that your working yarn is on needle 3. Okay, this is needle 3 here, so you want to make sure that your working yarn is on this side. With the point of needle 3, I'm going to pick up this stitch right here, this first stitch on needle 1, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to transfer that stitch and onto needle 3, and then I'm going to take the first stitch here, the stitch right behind the one that I just transferred. I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to pass it over that stitch that I just transferred, and I'm going to drop it. Okay. From this point, you're going to take this stitch that that you transfer from needle 1. You're going to put it back onto needle 1. Slide that down. And then you want to make sure that you tighten the join by pulling on both ends of the tail and the working yarn. So you want to make sure that you tighten that up. And then you're going to add your stitch marker. Now, as far as stitch marker goes, I love using these little rubber bands. Or as the kids like to call them, silly bands, right? They like to make those silly band bracelets. So I found this little tiny rubber band to be perfect for my stitch mark. And the reason why is because I find that because I'm not working in the round, I always lose my stitch markers. So I found this to be perfect because I just wrap it around the tip of my needle like twice, and it kind of stays there and it doesn't go anywhere. So if you want a cool way of finding because if you're like me and you find that you're losing your stitch markers, try using a rubber band. So now at this point we're going to go ahead and begin the cuff. Okay, so with the 4th needle we're going to go ahead and we're going to begin knitting in the round. So we're going to knit all the stitches on from needle 1. We're going to knit 1, purl 1. And it seems it's going to feel a little awkward at the very beginning because all the needles all 3 needles are going to feel weird. They're going to be a little loose, but as you knit a couple rounds, that'll get a little bit better for you and you'll see it'll tighten up a little, but right now it seems a little wonky. So I'm just going to go ahead and knit this first needle so you could see how we transfer from one to the other. And so I'm just knitting 1, purling 1 to create our rib. Now it's going to seem a little small as you're knitting it, but I promise you it'll stretch. The cuff stretches a little bit. So, all right. So I just finished that last stitch. And then you just begin knitting on the 2nd needle. Okay, so the cuff is done now, and I kind of skipped ahead a little bit, and I went and knitted rounds 16 through 18, which is just straight knitting. And now I'm on round 19. So on round 19, it says on needle 1 we're going to knit 4. So we're going to go ahead and knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to knit front and back of the next stitch. And we'll knit to the back of that stitch, creating an increase. Okay? And then we're going to knit to the last stitch on needle 1. And on that stitch, we're going to knit front and back as well. Creating a 2nd increase. And then on needle 2, we're going to knit 4. Then we're going to knit front and back of this next stitch. Creating another increase. And then we're going to knit to the end of the needle. And finally on needle 3, we're going to knit 4. We're going to knit front and back of the next stitch. And we're going to knit to the end of that needle. So altogether we have now we just made 4 increases on that round. So once again, I jumped ahead a little bit and I went and knitted 2 rounds, rounds 20 and 21. And now I'm ready to begin working on round 22. Now in round 22, you'll notice that the abbreviation M1L is make one left. And I wanted to come to this point and show you guys what that looks like. So to make one left, which is an increase, we're going to separate, and it's going to be the first stitch in round 22. We're going to separate this a little bit, and I want you to notice right here, this little bar is where we're going to create that increase. And to make one left, you're going to take the tip of your left needle and you're going to go from front to back and lift that onto the needle like that. Let me show you that again. You're going to separate these 2 stitches a little bit, and you're going to see that bar that separates the 2 stitches. You're going to go from the front and lift that bar up onto your needle. Okay? Taking your empty needle, you're going to go ahead and knit behind that stitch. That's a make one. So round 22 says make one left, you're going to knit one, you're going to make one left again. And again, we're going to stretch it out a little bit. With the tip of your left needle, you're going to go from the front to the back, put that onto your needle, and you're going to knit behind that stitch. Okay, and now we're going to knit to the end of that round. So I'm just coming to the end of round 22. And then for the next round, which is going to be round 23, and all other odd rows, you're going to knit the entire round. Okay, so continue until you get to round 30, and we're going to pause there for now. Okay, so now that I came to the end of round 30, I jumped ahead a little bit and I did knit the 1 round right after round 30. And so now the next step is to remove the stitch marker, and then you're going to transfer the first 11 stitches onto a piece of scrap yarn. So I have my scrap yarn here and I have my tapestry needle, and I'm going to go ahead and transfer the first 11 stitches onto the scrap yarn. Four, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And so we're just gonna tie the end of that together. You don't want to tie don't tie it too tight. You kind of want to leave a little bit of a gap. As you can see here, I left a little bit of a open space here, and the reason why is because later on we're going to go back and we're going to try on the thumb. Okay, so this is what we call the thumb gusset here, and you can see how it like kind of sticks out of the mitten there a little bit. So this is going to be our thumb. We're going to place these on hold for now, and then the next step is that we are going to cast on 1 stitch and join in the round. So to pick up an additional stitch, I'm going to go ahead and make one left like I did just before by taking the tip of my left needle inserting it front to back. Gonna knit behind that stitch. And then I'm gonna take that stitch and place that stitch right onto the last needle, making that stitch now the last stitch of the round. Then I'm going to take my stitch marker and put it back onto that needle. So now we are ready to begin the color work. We are ready to begin the chart or the color work of the mittens. I wanted to point out that it's only 5 rows of color work, which is pretty awesome, and it's at the very top. So just to go over real quick, my main color is going to be blue. My contrasting color is going to be contrasting color A is green, contrasting color B is going to be white, and contrasting color C is going to be mustard. And as I explained in video 1, take that away, we'll be starting with green. And a little trick I like to do on how to join yarn is simply tie a single knot onto my blue yarn, draw that all the way to the top, and begin the chart. So looking at the chart, we're going to be starting with green, followed by blue, and you're going to continue that sequence all the way around. And once again, as I mentioned in video 1, we read from right to left when we work in charts. Right to left, and then the rows go up. Okay? And as I mentioned earlier in video 1, be careful on how you carry your floats. And when I say floats, it's the little guys in the back, the little bars that float in the back of your work. So we start with the green, followed with the blue. Green's going to go over. Blue is going to go under the green. Green over. Blue under. All right, so you'll continue the color work for the next 5 rounds, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I just finished the color work portion of my mitten, and I wanted to pause here for a second and remind everyone that sometimes we get loose stitches when we come to the end of each round when we're doing the color work. And all you really need to do is just to make sure that you're tugging on the ends of that yarn. So make sure you tug on that just to tighten up the stitches as you come around at the end of each round. So now we're just going to be working with the main color, which in my case it's the blue. And for the next round, it's going to be just knit stitches, and then followed by a knit 1, purl 1, rib for 3 rounds. So I'm going to pause there, finish up the top of my mitten, and then we'll go talk about the thumb gusset. Okay, so I just finished the top portion of the mitten, finished the color work and the ribbing, and now we are ready to finish off with the thumb. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and try on my mitten. And earlier I mentioned we wanted to leave a gap, and this is why. We want to make sure that our thumb can fit in. If we had it too tight, then we wouldn't be able to get our thumb through. So it's looking pretty good. And so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take the 11 stitches and we're going to transfer these 11 stitches onto 2 needles. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and take my first needle and pick up 5 stitches on 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then I'm going to take my second needle and pick up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I want to stop here for a second and show you guys something. As you get around, it gets a little bit tight in those last 2 stitches. So what you want to do is you want to lift that scrap yarn up and expose the stitch that's there. Five, and we got 1 more to go. And so this is where you have to really kind of dig in for that stitch and find it. And 6. And this is when you will go ahead and cut the yarn. All right, so now that I have 5 stitches on 1 needle, 6 stitches on the second needle, I need to go ahead and I need to pick up 2 additional stitches. So when you open up the thumb, you're going to want to grab 1 stitch from this side and 1 stitch from this side. So to do that, what I like to do is I like to go on the inside and I like to look for that little purl stitch that's hiding right here. I don't know if you guys can see that. I like to lift that up as 1 stitch, and then I'm going to go on the other side and I'm going to do the same thing here. So that's 2 stitches that I just picked up. And to make it a little bit more even, I'm going to transfer 1 stitch from this needle on here. Okay. And 1 stitch on this side. All right, now you're going to notice that you have no yarn coming out of anywhere, right? This is where you're going to have to join your yarn. Now, what I like to do is I just like to take about maybe 6 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and tuck that inside the thumb. Oops. And just pull from the outside in. I'm going to go ahead and place my marker. Now at this point you can place your marker pretty much on any needle you want. I'm going to go ahead and place it on this needle here. And we are going to begin knitting. What I have on my pattern is 9 rounds. However, depending on how big your thumb is, I would go ahead and knit 4 rounds and then try on the mitten and see where you're at as far as the length of the thumb. So I'm going to go ahead and knit a couple rounds, and then I'm going to go ahead and try on the mitten to see where I'm at. Okay, so this is a good place to stop and try on the mitten. I went ahead and did 4 rounds, and I'm going to go ahead and try on the mitten. Now this is a good place to stop, but because I'm making these mittens for a friend of mine who happens to have bigger hands, I'm going to continue knitting 9 rounds instead of 4. But if these were for me, I'd stop here. And you could see 4 rounds is good enough, or maybe 5. You can even go 6. But I want you guys to go ahead and knit your thumb and make sure that you try it on every few rows just to make sure that you're not gonna go past your thumb. All right, so go ahead, finish that up, and then you're gonna go ahead and bind off loosely on the thumb, and then we're done. Okay, I just completed the first mitten. What you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and repeat the entire pattern one more time for the second mitten. But there's just one thing that I want to talk about before we end today, and that is sometimes when we make mittens, we have these weird little gaps or holes in our work, and especially it's around the thumb, right, where we connect. So the best way to fix that is to turn your mitten inside out. And what we're going to do is we're going to graph the hole. Grab your tapestry needle. And you're going to put on that mitten from the inside, right? And you're just going to go weaving in and out. Just until you get to that point. So I'm coming to the first hole there. You see I'm closing that gap. So you just want to go almost like in a zigzag formation till you close that loop. Well, that's it, fiber friends. We just came to the end of part 2 for this knit along. We got one more video to go happening next week, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget, we do have our Zoom Q&A sessions happening each week during this knit along, happening the Sunday following the release of each video at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find the schedule on my social media on Instagram. So be sure to join in on that. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to me through social media, or you can email me at brooklynboyknits@gmail.com. Until next week, happy knitting.